Alright, and welcome back, everyone. And today we got one more pre-Sodor grouping railway to talk about. This time we'll be talking about the Tidmouth, Knapford, and Elsbridge Light Railway. Now you guys may be asking, what is the Tidmouth, Knapford, and Elsbridge Light Railway, and what engines ran on that line? Well, it was one of Sodor's oldest railways, which eventually merged with the Sodor and Mainland Railway and the Wellsworth and Sudbury Railway to form the Northwestern Railway. This line was originally run by horses, but then a young Topham Hatt, later to be known as Sir Topham Hatt, designed a fleet of small engines for the line, known as the coffee pots, partially due to their vertical boilers resembling a coffee pot, and their tendencies to cough up dirty brown water. Now, if you remember, we got introduced to a coffee pot named Glyn, who was the number one, but when the Audrey lectures were revealed, it turns out the number one was actually a mixed-shift locomotive. It's kind of like a coffee pot. Yeah, just to let you know, none of these are Glyn, but I do have my own headcanon for Glyn when we get to number one, okay? Alright. Now then, let's get started. First up, we have Minnie, the mixed-shift engine. She was the first engine to be built for the line. And just to let you all know, she has a tendency. When talking to, she kind of has problems when talking to people, because when she's having a conversation with someone, you could expect frequent changes in subjects or to get rudely interrupted. Anyways, she remained in original conditions, you can see here, for a few years until a vertical boiler was mounted on the rear end of her chassis. Old shape or new shape, Minnie has a pretty unusual design and has an oddball personality to match. And like I said, when she's having a conversation with someone, you could expect frequent changes in subjects or to get rudely interrupted. Alright, And over the years, she had begun to show her age. It was then decided that building a new engine for the railway was more capable than rebuilding Minnie with a stronger chassis. A new coffee pot was built, and Minnie was relegated to spare engine for a while. Now, my headcanon is that while Minnie was showing her age, it was then decided that building a new coffee pot as the new number one would be kind of more preferable. And that coffee pot is obviously Glyn. But don't worry, Minnie's not scrapped. She actually gets put on static display in Sir Robert Norby's Railway Museum. As a way of showing the past engines and what they look like in modern day. And you can probably picture what a conversation between her and Glyn would go like. Now then, on to number two. Now, this is Roger, and let me just tell you one more thing before I get into my headcanon for him. Okay, so just like the W and S, the TK and ELR's names have been revealed, and their names are Silas Cliff. You get the point. Okay. Yeah, just like Rexel Jet, I am disappointed that all 8 names are masculine. But Hey, it's my AU, I can do what I want. And plus, maybe Minnie and number 3, which I'll get into a little. Like, Minnie and Beryl were probably built with the names Silas and Clifford and then transitioned. That's my headcanon for them. Okay. Anyways, number 2 was a much more stronger and capable engine compared to number 1, and his design was very similar to those that worked at the Foma docks in the port of Par. As you can see here, given how close Roger and Thomas are, I would have been surprised that if Roger overran a signal and as nearly he avoided a collision with Thomas. Luckily, no one was hurt. And you may notice that he made Roger's face red compared to the majority of steam engines with gray faces. And you may notice that some engines in the Railway series, mostly diesels, mostly big diesels, have an embedded face instead of a separate gray one. And he thinks he figured out the logic behind it. Most steam engines with gray faces have them in place of a door, whether it be a metal smokebox door or a wooden door like Toby's. Diesel engines with gray faces, meanwhile, have a face where the grille would be in real life. Meanwhile, engines in rolling stock with embedded faces don't usually have a door at the front. Their face is just part of the body. So that's what he did for Roger and the other coffee pots going forward. Now then, my headcanon for Roger is that he's brought back into working order and is a member of the Farquhar branch line as a way to contribute to the coffee pots that did run Thomas's branch line. And this works with him and the other 2, which I'll get to in a minute. Now then, next up we got Beryl. And just to let you know, she has a slightly different design from Roger, with enclosed side plates and a roof. You know, like, you should get a roof like me and be up to date. You'd look far more like a proper engine. No thank you, protested Roger. You look less like an engine and more like a brake van. I think I'll stick to my own design, thank you very much. You know, like that. And, like I said, she, Roger, and Danny, who I'll get to in a little bit, are all restored and work on Farquhar to this present day in my AU. It's a way to contribute to the coffee pots that did run on the railway. Yeah, she and Roger are like fun characters again. And she can still get a little bit snobbish with her having a roof that keeps her crew clear of wet and windy days. But she would occasionally brag to the engines with cabs that was of her design. Until one day where she learned that sometimes having a roof is just not always important, and it's just being yourself. Something like that. Now then, let's go on to number 4 now. Danny. Now then, the thing is, we don't know much about the 4th coffee pot, other than it exists. We only know of number 4's existence from a passing mention in the island of Sodor, its people, history, and railways. It's possible we may get more information that completely debunks his design, but for now, this is how Rex Jet imagined him. Number 4, aka Danny, has a similar design to Roger and Beryl, but with a larger boiler and an overall covered roof, somewhat resembling a standard gauge version of Chalona with a cab. Anyways, he lasted longer than the other coffee pots. It's due to being a lot more stronger than them. But, like his siblings, his braking abilities began to show. And this would eventually show when Thomas became a member of the Farquhar branch line, and then Toby came along, and Danny was just being reduced to shunting services. Until one day, he had enough, and convinced Toby's crew that Toby was too tired to go up to the quarry, and that they should be let out instead. And so Danny set off, and just to further, with the quarryman's coach, and just to prove his point, he took more trucks than he could realistically carry. And then, when he got onto the hill, the truck surged forward, sending Danny flying. The angry policeman then chased him on his bike. And then, when Thomas and Toby woke up, they saw Danny derailed on a set of points, with stones spilled everywhere. The Fat Controller arrived later that day and had a stern word with Danny. He was put onto a siding and stayed there for what felt like years. However, by the time Percy arrived on the branch line, Danny had disappeared, never to have been heard from again. Neither Thomas or Toby know what happened to Danny, and have never quite plucked up the courage to ask. Yeah, that's Danny's story. Oh boy. And like I said, he, Roger, and Beryl are restored in present day and work on the Farquhar branch line as a way to contribute to them working on the branch line the days before Thomas, Toby, and Percy came along. He can still get a little overconfident of how he's the strongest of the three of them, but eventually learns that strength is not always the most important factor, and helping your friends and siblings is what really matters. And maybe, just maybe, they might see Glynn pass by them a few times when he's hauling, like, rail services. And that's my headcanons for the Tidmouth, Knapford, and Elsbridge Light Railways coffee pots. Let me know what you think on them down below. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!